in this fear, I'm busting through the ceiling. I'm following your lead, I'm following this feeling.
Hey guys, welcome back to Enlightened. It's your host Kev here. So in today's video, it's just going to be a brief video. I've just been putting more bits together for the Christianity and Druidic order in Britain. That video, I don't even know how to word the name of the video for one, but I kept adding more and more stuff to it, and I've just added more stuff to it then, and to be honest, it's too big. I don't want to be talking for 2.5 hours again, because this is bigger than the last video, that Adam and Eve. This one's going to be well bigger. So sorry mate, I'll take that hat off. And yeah, I've been sitting here contemplating as I've been going through other bits and bobs, and there's something that I really needed to ask this question to people, because I've just bought a book and opened it, and I'll put a photograph on the screen now, and it made me realise, there's nationalism in every country. Wherever you go, there's nationalism, national pride, and national prejudice. And it just got me thinking, like, why is there so many different tribes, if you will, in Britain? Now, if you want to go for the accent, that's like a Scottish accent, and then there's various accents in Scotland itself. And then you go over to Ireland, and that was a bad accent, but over in the north, in the Northern Ireland, they have a more soft-spoken accent, County Derry and all this kind of stuff. And then you go down south, and it's a bit more, how you doing? Hey, that's a terrible accent. These accents are terrible. But then you've got like a Geordie, which is right northeast, Newcastle, Sunderland, Mackenway. Why? How you doing down there, fella? Do you want a cup of tea, like? 2 sugars in your cup of tea, like? And you go down to Cornwall, the Cornish. You get folks down here, you come down, you do a bit of archaeology. Has anyone ever seen Time Team? The guy with the red hair on Time Team? And he'd be like, oh, let's dig a trench down there, Well, that's a Cornish accent. And obviously I'm Scouse, so I've got a Scouse accent. But then, you've got Birmingham. You go down to Birmingham, 2.5 hours away. You go, all right there, mate, 30 miles away, you got into Manchester, the guys in the northwest. But they're different from the guys in Liverpool or St. Helens. You go down to St. Helens, and St. Helens has got a bit more like a bit of a mishmash accent. So, and then obviously you've got like London, where if you were to go to, I don't know, hello, if you come into the House of Parliament, and then we can discuss our future misgivings or whatever, you've got House of Parliament where like the leadership is. So you've got all these different accents in Britain. Now, Britain was not part of Europe until 1954. I think it was around 1954, I'd have to double check that, that's off the dome. But around about in the 50s, we signed a trade agreement with Europe. Now, part of this trade agreement was like a block trade. And then in this block trade, it stopped all the different nations within inside undercutting each other. So it was bad for the consumer, but it was great for the industries of each country that they couldn't be undercut. So on one hand, it was actually a good marketing tool, and on the other hand, it was marketing control. They were controlling the prices and all this kind of stuff. But that was in the 50s. Britain since then has joined the European Union full and the European Commission, and then left a few years ago. Well, we voted to leave. We're still waiting to get out of there, to be honest. Not everyone's for it. Some people are against it. Some people wanted to be Remainers. Others were Brexiteers. Well, the thing is, yeah, as I was looking at some of the history stuff there, like the Celtic attack on Rome, came up, and obviously the Brythonic king who went over there and absolutely spanked the Romans. Well, that got me thinking. I was like, all right, so the Romans, that was like a European powerhouse, and then you had the Celts, and they're trying to say Britain and all this area of France and Spain are Celts. And I could probably disagree with the terminology in some ways, but I'd agree with that because I'm thinking that this is where the Trojan War was, in this corner. You know, England and France, or Britain and France, different parts of Britain and France have had conflicts for 1,000 years. There was like 1,000 years where it just didn't end. It was perpetual conflict. But on top of that, you've got all these migrations that came in, and if you want to go way back into antiquity, you know, we're talking like Sumer, the ancient Sumerians and Assyrians. Apparently they, through the connection through Labana and the Hittites as well, had a trade network that stretched all the way to Britain. And then you had the Scythians, the Scyths. Apparently they moved, I think they go on to become the Visigoths later on. They move along Northern Europe, the Baltics, and then into Scotland, apparently. I'll be totally honest, little segue, I think it was probably the way round. The more I look into it, the more I'm starting to think, actually, it probably went the other way. But I digress on that point for now. So you've got all these different migrations through ancient times coming to Britain, right? Now, I've just named probably like half a dozen easy different accents. And there's easily, what, say 10 to a dozen accents in Britain. And then they're like centre points, and then they get patches in between where like you get an amalgamation of different accents, which apparently Scouse is supposed to be like an amalgamation of several accents. I disagree, personally. I think it's our own accent. I think it's our own tribe. Whether it's like some kind of, going back to like some kind of Phoenician thing, is something I've been playing with, and it's a video I'm actually working on in the background. It's nowhere near complete, there's so much information there, but there's all different bits and bobs I'm interested in. But yeah, you've got all these different accents in Britain. Now, if the lost tribes are in Britain, would they have the same accent, or would they have different accents? Would they have the same dialect, or would they have different dialects? Would they have the same language, or would they have different languages? Well, I'd say they'd have the same language with different dialects and so on and so forth. And I don't think it's tied in and locked in as a complete language. So this is the runic system we're talking about here. So you've got the runic system going all the way around Scandinavia, all the way around the Mediterranean, and all across the western coastal regions of Europe and North Africa. And then it goes in and it ties into certain different connections to languages in the Near East and the Middle East. So as I'm thinking about it there, I can't help but ponder, is all these accents tribal accents? Because Britain itself, like I say, only joined Europe, say 100 years, well, not even 100 years ago, 50 years ago. You had the First World War, that's seen major integration and movements as well. People resettling and all this kind of stuff, because the old world kind of got teared up from that point on till modern day times where we are now. Like I say, we have controlling organisations much like the EU, IMF, United Nations, you know, so on and so forth. Now, if these accents in Britain haven't deviated for centuries since English, Middle English and Old English, if these languages have all kind of maintained, obviously, sorry, not the languages, but the accents, regional accents, dialects, and in some cases languages, as in the Cymric in Wales, the Ogham in Ireland, you know, and all that kind of stuff, then you've got to ask yourself, why does everyone today still have different accents? Britain's not that big. It's really not that big. And there hasn't been any major migrations into Britain, well, as far as I'm aware of, since, I couldn't even tell you, to be honest, because history's a bit sketchy, but, you know, we know that at least hundreds of years there hasn't been any major migrations that we can tell so far, say since the Hanoverians and all that came over. That seems to be an influx there, because you started to see a deviation from Old and Middle English into a more Germanic version of English, which you have to ask yourself the question, why does nobody have a German accent? So I talk in a Spanish accent. So I say, like, you know, ¿Dónde está? Por favor, señor. I don't know. Uno cerveza. Nah. So these thoughts are a little bit everywhere at the minute. That's why I'm asking people for their opinions, if anyone's made it this far and anyone actually has an opinion on this. But I just can't understand, like, no one speaks with a German accent. No one has a French accent. But yet, as soon as you come into Britain, an area that is so small, you know, parlez-vous français, you do a French accent because they all sound similar. At least to us. Maybe they think all the English sounds similar and all the Scots sound similar. But, like, Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland's a good example here. It's the same island, which is, well, half the size of Great Britain, the Great Britain. And in the north, they've got such a high-pitched tone compared to those in the south. And then you come to Liverpool, you've got the Wirral over the water, the Wirral Peninsula, which is in between Liverpool, England and Wales. And then you've got just northeast slightly, 25, 35 miles down the road, you've got Manchester, which has got a totally different accent. And like I say, St Helens is in between, which has got its own accent compared to Manchester and Liverpool. So like, excuse me, so like I say, there is centre points for the main accents, or regional dialects, and then there's nexus pointers in between them all. So I'd really like to know if people would agree with this notion that, and I'm not saying this is verbatim, like I say, this is just a postulation at the moment, but what if all these different accents in Britain are the accents of the lost tribes? Like, in the past, like, you think of the lost 10 tribes and they're migrating. There's several migrations, apparently they had all the tribes, in total honesty. But if you've got 10 tribes, would they all migrate together in the same path, or would they deviate? And as they're migrating and they're splintering out along the lines, then dialects are becoming more and more detached from each other, and the accents are becoming more and more detached from each other. And then as that grows and expands, as we've seen through time, language actually changes. Like I say, English, you've got modern English, Middle English, Old English, all phonetics. And some people would say this language actually has roots in, like, Lacrinus, not Lacrinus, well, Laregia, when England was known as Laregia back in the ancient times. English may have come from the Isinglas, English Isinglas, but you would not be able to get away with that if you debate certain people. Like that book, 1 second, my apologies, just wanted to go and get this book. Right, this is one that it's only recently been delivered. Martin J. Doherty, Celts. You can see on there, I'll actually put a picture on the screen, I'll take a photograph. As you can see from the top left, you've got typical English views in Wales. And this is all, someone's wrote this in the book. And as you can see all these notes, it's got me really pondering the question about this whole nationalism and this whole language thing. Because you could have two people that look almost identical in different parts of the world, and they're attached through their modern borders. So like you could have English and Welsh, say, and they could be 2 generations or even 1 generation apart, yet their language would be completely different. If in Wales, if you were brought up with your Cymric, in England, if you're brought up with your English, then you've got only a few miles apart 2 totally different languages. Now, in the languages, because words change and things like that, stories change. And wow, we're 15 minutes in. Sorry, I only meant to do like a 5-minute video here. we seen the other day, the cloud of unknowing. I think that's bearing fruit, that sentiment now, the cloud of unknowing, because I feel like I've got a massive rain cloud over my head with this one. I don't understand how so many languages can have the same origins. Don't forget the Indo-European branch of languages has its same roots. So it all came from somewhere. Whether this is the Tower of Babel and the diffusion of language, who could say? But to have so many accents, so many languages, well, regional dialects in one nation, it boggles the mind in 2023 when you can literally, it's not like you had to go on horseback 150 years ago and travel days to go and reach someone. You can now pick up the phone and speak to someone. The integration of language and dialects and tone and words, like structures of words, like, sorry to segue again, but I'm from Liverpool, so the word lad is prominent. Like every lad calls the other lad lad. You know, that's just the way it is. You know, you can have you go up to the northeast, you know, like sorry, I'm forgetting some of the phrases now. Didn't really think this video through, just turn the camera on and go. But like in Bolton, for example, Bolton's just up the road. You know, they've got a different accent again from St Helens and Manchester and Liverpool, but just the southern base of Lancashire. So it's in the same area, but the dialect, the accent's different. They'll call a friend cocker or cock. Alright cockers, alright cock. Where in some other places you call someone a cock and generally it's an insult. So it's absolutely madness. And we're so packed in Britain. We've got all these notions of people migrating in, the lost tribes, the Scythians, the Cimmerians, you know, Brutus, all these different migrations coming into Britain. But why would they come into Britain? And when you think of that land of the covenant phrase and stuff like that for Britain, so it used to be known as the land of tin. Some people reference it to, but then other people reference it more, like scholarly people call it like the land of the covenant, where like basically like a promised land. Now I'm starting to really think that all these different accents and dialects and stuff are the lost tribes, and we've been carrying them accents and dialects and languages out for millennia. Don't ask me how just yet, or all the intricacies of it, because like I say, this is something I'm just starting to postulate really as I was looking into this Judaism, this Druidic Christian order, potentially. I had to start looking in other places, so I started looking. This is going to be a future video that I am actually starting to work on. You have to go and look at the Aegean, and then look at the Levant, right? This is going to be the last thing I talk about. You go to the Aegean and the Levant. We've already discussed the Dorians, the Doridic influence. They brought new language, new culture, new societal reform, all this kind of stuff. While at the same time, there was a period of the Dark Ages all around this area. One of the most recent things I was reading about is that in the Levant and in the Aegean, there's certain elements of the culture that was blossoming around 900 BC, which again, just after the Doridic arrival. We see expansions on philosophy, articulation, construction, all this stuff starts to develop to a higher level. As I said in a recent video, the whole area leveled up. Now, if you track back about 50 years before that to 100 years before that, you find other elements in the Western Mediterranean that link to the Eastern Mediterranean. So again, I'm trying to put maps together a little bit. It's difficult, like I say, doing all the reading and trying to get it all together, but you've got these influences that came from the West that arrived in the East long before any migration from east to west, including Brutus. So unfortunately, like I say, nationalism and national pride exists across the board, unfortunately. And just when I was reading this book, I'd had a little thought about this language thing earlier on today, and then I seen this, and what was it he calls it? English pigs, or something like that. Bear with me just a moment again. It is the typical language and government, and something proven to be spoken throughout the whole of Wales, Scotland and Ireland. So he's talking about the runic system here, which is found in mainland England, as well as mainland Wales, mainland Scotland and mainland Ireland, as well as the Azores, as well as in the Canary Isles, as well as in Northwest Africa, as well as in the Levant, as well as in Italy, as well as in Spain. So this person already has took a nationalistic standpoint that Wales is at the forefront, and then all the other Celtic Gaelic languages, Ogamic and all this, all around it, are linked together. But know what the funny thing is? I keep having this debate with people, like I mentioned, Llewellyn, who believes he's the next descendant to the throne of Wales or Britain. He sincerely believes that the English don't exist. They never did. But then in the same sentence, he will call me an English hack, or he will say I'm just an English puppet and things like that. And I don't take offence to these things, to be honest. It is what it is. People can have their own opinions, but this person here has quite clearly took that stance that the English are evil, and we need to understand that. I'm going off all over the place, but we need to understand here what the definition of the term English is, because if you mean English as in the Saxons, but then you need to say the Saxons. If you mean English as in the Jutes or the Angles, then you need to say the Jutes or the Angles, because we all know they arrived in different, all around Britain, in Wales, in Ireland, in Scotland, all over the place, Cornwall, Kent, they came all over the place. Now, that language structure of the runic system and the philosophies that accompanied it seem to have been buried. That's a given, in essence. Now, if you want to talk about the change coming from Europe into Britain, or Britain going to Europe, that's a different topic altogether. And if the Saxons did come to Britain, then where's the Saxon language? Where's the Saxon accent? I want to know what that is. Is that the London accent? Is that the Kent accent? Is that the Cornish accent? Is it the, this accent should be prominent, unless you're trying to tell me that the Saxons came over and they had all these different accents and they integrated all over Britain and took on the local accents, even though the same person, like Pierre Peregrine Llewellyn, he'll tell you that all the Brythonic peoples that were in the geographical location of England today are not ancient Brythonic, and that their ancestors were raped, plundered, beheaded and enslaved as sex slaves. That's what he's putting out there. And the Saxons came over and basically had the way with all these women for 100 years and rewrote the DNA structure of Britain. Well, I've already disputed that with them, and it's an absolute farcical, because it's been proven that in parts of Wales there's more Saxon, Anglo-Saxon, whoever this bloody Anglo-Saxon mythical peoples are. That market that they attribute to these peoples can be found in high doses in Wales as well as southeast England. But when you get to northwest England or northeast England, those numbers drop significantly. So when they say they have blanket statements of the English, then the statement's an absolute joke, because they're trying to tell you, like say, that on one hand England never existed, there was no English, but then they'll say, but now everyone in England has got this English DNA because of the Saxons, Jutes and Angles. So then you say, oh right, then where did the Saxons, Jutes and Angles come from? Seriously, where did they come from? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. There's not been a single location where they've gone, right, this is where the massive settlement was that was able to send out thousands and thousands of young men and women to go and conquer a land that were getting slaughtered as well. Don't forget, is it Tudrig? I think Tudrig had like many battles. Arthur had many battles. There was a number of kings who were the Pendragon, who was the High King, which is something as well. And they fought off all these conflicts, fought off many battles, and then eventually this structure of kingships, don't forget, like I say, the Pendragon was the High King, but only for wartime. So he became High King at the discretion of all the other kings. And there wasn't just kings in Wales, there was kings from Scotland, England, Ireland, Cornwall. Again, England was called the Regia, but it's quite confusing. I don't know, like I said at the start of this video, I don't have any answers on this. This is something that I'm trying to figure out myself. That's why I'm having conversations with all these different people. And to be honest, I might have waffled a little bit because it's not well prepared. But the question is fundamental. Why is there so many accents in Britain? There's got to be a plausible, logical explanation for it. And I'm open to find it. If someone else has it, then please share, because like I say, I'm trying to get back to my Troy videos, if I'm being honest, because there's so much I want to discuss on there and I keep learning more and more. But the more I learn, the more I realise I need to actually explain a lot of other different things and stuff like that. And I'm getting all these different new ideas that I feel passionate about. And this language is one. And the divisiveness of certain people is another. This nationalist ideology and perception that, you know, it comes from a place of fear. I mean, we talked in that last video about certain virtues and things like that, but coming from a place of fear and insecurity leads to you lashing out like this individual has. I mean, I don't know if he's writ that before he sold it, hoping that the person who picks it up is English. Because why would he address it as the reader? It was meant to be a 5-minute video, but I'm fresh back from the gym, full of energy, so you know what it's like, start rabbiting on. But I'm going to be heading out now, take the dog for a walk in that rain. Say the next video is going to be this Druid video, but I'm tempted not to do it. I'm starting to think that I might just leave that as a chapter in my book, because it's so big. I might just cherry pick certain elements out of it and then use it as an indicator video rather than like a full breakdown video. I mean, I could probably do several recordings, but then if I did, it's just going to take up too much time and I'm not going to be able to get the recordings of a lot of other stuff I want to talk about. And yes, I'm going to leave it there. There's some good stuff coming down the line in the next few videos. I might have some fresh attire. Thanks to Mary Ann and Wallflowers. So if anyone is familiar with them, go and check them out. Or sorry, not familiar with them, go and check them out. They do a lot of cool stuff, a lot of community stuff, a lot of food initiative stuff, a lot of recipes, food storage. You know, it's a cool channel, especially in the times that we're in now with the cost of living crises, and you know, people just getting more and more pissed off, really. You know, more and more people are getting pissed off with the oppression, the restraints, the control, which it is getting a lot. But if I just harken that back to what I was saying near the start of the video, this control that's like all around us now, it started somewhere and it had to build out, and it kept building and kept growing until eventually it became like a nation. And then a nation that had been taken over from the inside, if you will, by a philosophy and ideology. And then that nation set their eyes on another one. There was already corruption going on in there. They managed to get that. Then those two nations can come together and take out that nation. And then that's how we see the expansion to the point now where we've got Well, we've got NATO, we've got all these different alliances that are not even just militaristic. You know, you've got food, energy, financial, right across the board. We're getting it from all angles. So many knives in our back off the powers that be. They say Britain has had human inhabitation for nearly 1 million years, and they say they either were pushed south or were, or went extinct during the last glacial maximum, which was around 20,000 years ago, ending around 10,000 years ago. So somehow they think everyone left Britain, and then as the ice melted, they came back to Britain and started living there and building all these megalithic structures and all this kind of stuff. But the point I'm making there is, they say people lived there 800,000 to 1 million years ago, and then the whole continent was full of a mile thick ice. Can you imagine the weight of a mile thick of ice covering the whole of the UK? Yeah, it's heavy, isn't it? Yeah. So why wouldn't that push all the sedimentary layers down? And not to mention, when all the water was melting, the ground would melt. You see it over in Siberia right now. It's called permafrost. There'd be permafrost all over the place, and as it melted, it literally almost disintegrate. Go and look at any stuff that's coming out the permafrost in Siberia. Britain's not Siberia. Britain doesn't have permafrost, but yet somehow these are finding archaeological artifacts or historical artifacts that they claim go back nearly 1 million years. I mean, mainstream science is more and history, archaeology, physics, all this kind of stuff. It's more fantasy than watching a Peter Pan movie. So I'll leave it there, but just in a nutshell, so language, we've got the English language that's spoken all over Britain now, but that's not the original language, or maybe a variation of it was when you go back through Middle English, Old English, and then before that, now we're reaching into ancient times. And this is post-runic structure. So we had this whole runic structure that collapsed. Certain elements of it survived, but evolved into different language structures, i.e. British, or Cymric, or Ogmic, or Gaelic. You know, the runic language structure developed into the other languages, excuse me, that later went on to be Romance languages and all this kind of stuff, French, Germanic, and all that. Where did it all come from? It must have came from somewhere. And when you've got such a large area that had the same language in the past, then you have to think it came from somewhere. Either that, or the whole world, the whole of Indo-Europe just spoke the same language. I've had a theory that they actually spoke the same, but they wrote things down differently, because someone might have gone like, oh, I don't know, that's a cup. There's a cup there. So they went like, sorry, someone phoned me there. So say there was a cup, and they were like, that's a cup, or that's a book. Didn't have books back then, but there's a book. You might write that down, B-O-O-K, but someone might write it B-U-K, book, book. And then that younger person who calls it a book or whatever, they kept writing it as book, and they kept writing it as book. And then you've got up, and someone writes UP, up. Someone writes AP, like app, because they've got a funny accent, app instead of up. And then now all of a sudden you're seeing phonetical evolutions within the same language structure. Now, I'm not a linguistic expert, you know, I don't know like all this knowledge on phonetics and things like that. I've started with the Phoenicians and I'm trying to extrapolate and build out, like, but it seems so easy for language to evolve. As I say, I'm from Liverpool. I was in the army for over 10 years, so I was integrated with a multitude of languages, beliefs and ideologies, from the Gurkhas to the Fijians, to the Scots, to the English, to Northern Irish, loads of different peoples with different accents. but yet we could all communicate and we all knew what the same things were, but there'd be different words for the same things, like potatoes, tarties, famous Scottish word, tarties, for potatoes, but it's the same thing. But if you were to not know and come from the outside and look in and see the word tarty and the word potato, you'd be like, oh, they're different languages, but they must have the same root because they've got similarities. You've got the letters T in there and all this kind of stuff. So this is how it's all being operated, and this is how all the languages are, well, this is how I'm trying to operate, and this is how I'm trying to fish my way through back the structures. But yeah, if anyone's got any opinions on this whole language, where it came from and why there's so many different accents and dialects, let me know your thoughts. There's a couple of people in the comment section who really go ham, I'll be honest. Is it Inquisitive? I think your name is. He goes ham, he or she, not too sure, but you definitely need to start your own channel, mate. I know that, because you've got a lot of ideas. I don't agree with half of them, but I do agree with half of them, so you should definitely start a channel, mate, because you can then progress the conversation and develop it even further. But I'm going to leave it there. I'm waffling again, and if you've made it this far, love you all, and I hope we catch you in the next video. Peace.